Hello, everybody. This is Max, and welcome to another episode of MAGA Bytes. This is my full-length podcast I do exclusively for members of Maximus Premium, and I do these frequently, and I answer questions, and I am doing this for everybody right now, for all my followers, all my subscribers, everybody that follows me on Twitter, on Telegram, Getter, Gab, YouTube, and of course, for members of Premium, I'm doing it for everybody because it's a special Christmas MAGA Bytes live. And anyway, I hope everybody is ready for the holidays. And I hope everybody just disconnects and unplugs and enjoys time with their family and relaxes and just enjoys the new year because, man, I'm looking forward to everything. I mean, I'm having a blast and I'm really looking forward to the new year. So anyways, but I am joined. Let me get to it. I'm joined in studio with my sidekick, with the archangel herself, with the redoubtable, the brilliant, the lovely Roxy Balboa. Roxy, are you there? I hope so. I hope, are you there? Roxy? Hello. You having mic problems? Rox? Hello. Well, she's having technical difficulties, and she will fix them. So we'll get back to her in a second. So anyway, but getting back to it, welcome again. This is MAGA Bytes, and this is my full podcast. I typically do this where for everybody on Premium, we do these regularly, and I answer questions live. Also posted questions in Max's Garage. If you are not a member of Premium, you definitely want to become a member of Premium. I have to tell you, nobody is ever disappointed because it is a lot of fun. We have great intellectual conversations and we cover a lot of territory. But moving along, let me get into some of these questions that I've had. Now, one of the big ones, and this is really, let me just pull this up really quick. Okay, could you explain the situation with the evil Jack Smith and his current emergency petition to the Supreme Court? Okay, this was something that I promised all of you is that I would answer and kind of give you a succinct view. You got to know something here. There's a difference between criminal and civil court, right? Okay, so basic, let me just get this out of the way. There's criminal liability and there's civil liability. I should say there's civil liability and there's criminal charges, if you want to put it like that in layman's terms. All right. There is no immunity. Let's just put this out there. There is no immunity for a president, whether he be sitting or out of office, for criminal behavior. That's never been adjudicated by the U.S. Supreme Court. What they have done is they've actually said sitting presidents cannot be civilly sued, civilly liable while they're in court, while they're in the White House, as long as they're president. They can't be sued civilly. So that's basically, the Supreme Court has ruled on that a number of times in the last 50 years. Okay. The charges against Donald Trump, specifically by Jack Smith, are all criminal charges. So the Supreme Court has never taken up the issue, well, about bringing charges, criminal charges against the sitting president. That they never have. I think the closest we got to that, and as a country, was when Richard Nixon was about to be criminally charged. And there was an active criminal investigation going on in the Department of Justice into Watergate. But of course, he resigned, and President Ford, within hours, gave him a presidential pardon of all crimes known and unknown. So we didn't ever get to that point in our country's history. If you shoot ahead, I think it was in 1992, roughly, there was a case, Nixon versus, I don't know, Fitzgerald or something like that, where the Supreme Court ruled a sitting president, not a sitting president, a former president could not be sued civilly in court for things he did within the parameters of his office. I'm putting it in my own terms, okay? And that pretty much made a president, after he leaves office, immune to decisions that he made as president from civil liability, okay? So, for instance, think about this. Let's say, President Bush, for instance, we went into Iraq and all of that, and thousands of Americans lost their lives. Let's say a bunch of families wanted to sue him, which happened actually. They couldn't sue him for the loss for wrongful death of their children and the servicemen and going because he lied to us about WMDs. If a president could be sued, it would handcuff him as president. He would be having to second and third guess himself, and he'd probably be more prone to making. I wouldn't say he necessarily would make bad decisions. Maybe sometimes he'd make the right decision as a result of it, but it would basically handcuff him as president if he could be sued for anything after he left office for things he did as president. But then if you shoot ahead into 1997, I think it was Clinton versus Jones. A president could be sued after he left office civilly. His immunity did not protect him against that if he did things that were outside of the purview of the office of president. So if he was sexually harassing a woman in the Oval Office, he could be sued civilly for that. Okay. And now, of course, the question always still remains, could he be charged criminally for criminal behavior? That's never been adjudicated by the Supreme Court. They just never have taken it up. We never got a sitting president and a former president have never been charged criminally. So, okay, the difference between criminal and civil, of course, civil is just that. It's where people bring suits against the government. They bring suits against other individuals, independent private parties. Criminal is where the state is bringing charges, and that's beyond a shadow of a doubt. It has a higher bar. It is very difficult to prove that. Like if you're under, criminal investigation, or you're going to be criminally indicted, for instance, that means that it's supposed to mean that you have a preponderance of evidence beyond a shadow of a doubt. And then people, of course, that are charged criminally can also be charged civilly later on, if depends on the case. But getting back to the president, a president, whether he can be charged criminally as president, we never were there as a country. We've had investigations into sitting presidents criminally, but we've never gotten to that point where charges were preferred or filed. Former president, first time ever, President Trump, where criminal charges are being filed. And of course, it is a witch hunt, right? But at the federal level, and of course in Georgia, they're doing it at the state level as well. The New York case is civil, but the criminal element has never been, does he have immunity to that? That's never been decided. This is always going to end up back at the Supreme Court, right? Because the court has to make a decision on this. They will take this up eventually. But I don't know if they're going to do it right now because of something else I'm about to get to. So bear with me now. We've got a lot of different moving parts here. We have the immunity question, which is what the first question I've been asked by members of Premium, and I know a lot of my followers in general have just been throwing this question at me. So I'm answering it for all of them and trying to put it in perspective. The immunity question is this is what the Trump team are really asking the courts, the federal courts, to create a new doctrine, essentially, to set a standard, a new case law is what they're really doing. And can former president, is a sitting president or former president immune criminally? And I don't know if they're going to ever take that up and side with him. I personally do not think, I thought this 2 weeks ago, and a lot has happened since then, but I do not think that the Supreme Court or any federal court is going to create a new standard and basically say, the president is immune to criminal prosecution. Because think about that for a minute. That's not in the Constitution, anywhere in the Constitution. It's not there. That's the idea that you're immune, a sitting president or former president is even immune is not there. Founders never gave that. So think about, do you think Joe Biden should be criminally prosecuted when he leaves office for some of the things he's done? Certainly. Right? I mean, do you think Barack Obama should be criminally prosecuted? Certainly. Do you think Hillary Clinton should be criminally prosecuted? Certainly. So, I mean, if you start saying that, if you just lay out a new standard or doctrine, it's just like they're all immune now as well, and so I don't think that's going to happen. Now, I really don't think it's going to happen because of what the court did a few days ago when they decided they were taking up the Fisher case. The immunity questions before the court, they're going to make a decision sometime in early January. I would say they're going to do it in the first couple of weeks of January, but they'll definitely do it in January as to whether they're going to take the case or not. If they and I don't think they're going to take the case personally. I mean, maybe they will, but I think they'll do something that they'll punt, they'll remand it. Maybe they'll just take their time in deciding whether they're going to take the case. I don't know if they'll really do that. But they did decide something which I think is more critical, and I've mentioned this many times in the last month, and that is they took the Fisher case, which is significant. The most significant thing I think the court's done all year is they're taking the January 6th prisoners, 3 of them, one of them is named Fisher. They're taking their convictions on, I think it's section 1512, if memory serves, of the U.S. Code regarding specifically, what is the charge again? It's conspiring to, it's two charges. Trump is being indicted for 4 different things. 2 of them hinge on 512, and that's the federal indictment in the D.C. courts. And specifically, it's obstructing a federal proceeding and conspiracy to obstruct a federal proceeding. That federal law 1512, which was passed in 2002 by Republicans in the House and the Senate, who controlled everything back then, and the Bush administration, was always questionable as to what there was a argument at the time being made by libertarians that that particular law would be abused. It was really was intended to be applied to terrorists or people that were just rioters. But look what it resulted in, these stiff penalties that revolve around it if you're convicted on it. And it's never really been even enforced. And here we are, 21 years later, and look what they're using it against Americans who are basically just walking around the United States Capitol taking selfies, okay? Maybe being in a restricted area, okay, fine, that's a misdemeanor. But the idea that it's felonious behavior punishable with 20 years or 30 years in prison is obscene. And so the court, in an appeal from these 3 January 6 protesters who have now been convicted of this on this one point, they have appealed it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has agreed to hear it. And that's what happened last week. That changed all the dynamics in all these conversations, because that is the heaviest charge that's been laid at Donald Trump. And it doesn't get enough attention. That's the charge with the big time. It's 10, 20, 30 years prison time, whatever it is. It's an obscene law. It's an obscene punishment. It's silly. And I often think about it, that means if somebody stands up, in the gallery in the Senate and starts screaming and yelling during a Senate proceeding, are they guilty of violating that subsection? Should they go to jail for 20 years? It's ridiculous. What about if you pull the fire alarm like that one lunatic did, right? I mean, he should obviously be charged and go to prison for 20 years. It's absolutely absurd and ridiculous. I hope everybody's following me here. That's my train of thought. So this is unjust. It's unjust. It's sort of like in Les Miserables, remember, where Jean Valjean ended up going to jail for, I don't know how many years it was, frankly, for stealing a loaf of bread to feed his family. Is that just? Yeah, it was theft. Big deal. Should he go to jail for a number of years for trying to feed his family? No. I mean, there's that. I think that's the common sense argument. So the court, anyway, getting back to the court. So what did the court do? The Supreme Court has agreed to hear the appeal. No, because they're an appellate court. Okay. So what does that mean? At least 4 justices want to hear the appeal. That means at least 4 justices consider the verdict unjust. The court has a history of hearing appeals, and when they hear an appeal, more often than not, they overturn it, the decision. So I'm already going to say this. My money is that they're going to overturn the convictions on that, regarding that particular law, section 1512. Okay, that's what the appeal's on. What does that mean for Trump? Well, it means everything for Trump regarding Jack Smith and the case, because the 2 strongest indictments, or 2 strongest charges in the indictment, okay, out of the 4 charges in DC, have to do with 1512. Okay, conspiring to obstruct the federal proceeding, which relies on a conviction in obstructing a federal proceeding. Those are two of the charges. The other two are defrauding the United States, which you have to go back to like 1920 something. A Supreme Court Chief Justice Taft, who was the former president, he was the only president that ever became a Supreme Court justice. He actually sat on the Supreme Court. He wrote about what defrauding the United States is, and if you're in Premium, I'll post I'll post his statements and his decisions tomorrow in the garage, so it'll give an explanation on that. It's really arcane and a bit esoteric, and I don't think it's applicable. It's pretty weak. That's why, if you notice, nobody really talks about that charge too much. And then the other charge is violating people's civil liberties. Well, he's never going to be convicted on that. I mean, what does that mean exactly? How is he violating people's civil liberties? These were really weak charges. No, the real heart of it is obstructing a federal proceeding, and that's where it rests. And that's, again, the meaty, juicy, big, fat, felonious charge with the heaviest, stiffest penalty. Okay. And if 5 justices decide to overturn the convictions, they'll probably do so with extreme prejudice. They may rule the entire section unconstitutional, or define what it can be applied to very strongly. At the very least, they probably will. And that pretty much everything, all the other cases pending and all the other convictions will now be appealed based on their decision in Fisher. And so if others have been found guilty of under Section 1512, that renders the Trump trial and those charges are just going to be dismissed. I mean, what's her name? Chutkin? What is her name? Chutkin? Judge Chutkin? I don't know her name. Never mind. I'm not going to be disrespectful. You know what I was about to say, but it's a dumb name. Anyway, the thing is, yeah, I mean, she's not going to, anyway, I digress. She's going to dismiss those charges. She's going to have to, because how can she have a trial with, those would just be dismissed. What about the other two? I think the whole thing just goes out the door after that. There's no real point. There's nothing really to try him on anymore. He's not guilty of obstructing a federal, what are you charging him for? Standing outside, then just literally talking? Because that's what it comes down to at that point. So that's regarding the immunity. So how does this play in? And again, immunity and the Fisher. So those two kind of like collide, if you would. Those two different aspects of the same court case. Okay. And the Supreme Court's involved in both, or may get involved in the immunity. We'll know in a few weeks. They are definitely involved in the 1512 charge. Okay. So you've got those two that are colliding. And regarding the other two charges, it'll just be dismissed. And at that point, this whole thing, Smith's entire case in the D.C. court falls apart. Now, just one little fine point on all of this. If you notice, the judge has said that she's pretty much been removed from jurisdiction on the case because the Supreme Court is engaged in Fisher, and that's going to affect the two biggest charges against Trump in federal court. And also, the D.C. Circuit Court is expediting Trump's appeal on the immunity charge while the Supreme Court's deciding whether they're going to take it. And this goes back to Smith. Smith tried to, when I first heard what Smith did, I did tell people, I thought it was, if I was him, which I'm glad I'm not, I'm not that debased and dishonest. I'm not, this is a very wicked individual, but it was smart to go to the Supreme Court, right? I mean, I would have thought that the Trump team would have appealed to the court first because the DC circuit's liberal. So this is what I always say, guys, if you know me, I'm never that impressed with certain aspects of Trump's legal defenses. With some of these people that have some of the people that have worked for him have been kind of questionable. And I just was wondering, why didn't my first thing, I would have been telling him, let's appeal to the Supreme Court directly. Let's fast track this. So when Smith did it, I was shrugging my shoulders. I'm like, he may get slapped down. And so at first we all thought, when the court said, okay, we'll consider it on in January or something, whenever they meet again. It's gonna be early January, but they hadn't accepted it, and I'm like, well, that doesn't mean anything. You don't know how that's going to go. But then, of course, a few days later, they're saying, well, we're taking Fisher. Well, Fisher's it's going to cut to the heart of the you pull out the rug from underneath the January 6th protesters, okay? Because that's all they were at most. I mean, most of them were just sightseers. A few of them were protesting. They were just regular Americans that were just taking pictures of themselves. I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, please, they weren't burning down neighborhoods, killing, police officers in a mostly peaceful fashion, the way those debased, disgusting vermin were doing in 2020 for all kinds of stupid excuses, right? And I'm trying to just be polite, but no, these are just average people. Okay, you take the January 6th punishment away, the big one, and everything else kind of like the House of Cards, it just falls apart. I mean, like, okay, well, what do you? So you get all right. So if you were in a restricted area, you're charged with a misdemeanor. That's it. You pay your fine, you walk away. And I think you'll have some guidelines from if the court comes down the way I think they're going to come down. They may come down with extreme prejudice too. You may actually you're probably going to get like I think a 6-3 decision at the very least out of that court. And because don't tell me Roberts wasn't involved in accepting the appeal. He is the DC Circuit Justice. So, it's pretty, where this, I have a funny feeling the court, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Kagan and even Sotomayor jump in on and write concurring opinions in overturning this. I mean, maybe it won't happen. Okay. I'm not making a projection here, but I'm just saying, there's a real chance that the court's going to really smack down, because that's ridiculous. It's those convictions have been obscene. That's the word for it. And by doing this, they undermine the whole case against Trump. And that's a wrap on that one, guys. So that's immunity, and that is that is also the case regarding Fisher. I just call it the Fisher case because that's what it's called. Fisher versus something or other. And those two have collided on that point. Let me continue on here. Go to the next question. And Rox, if you ever get your microphone fixed, just chime in. Let's see here. Question 2. Please discuss the ramifications of SCOTUS agreeing to hear 1512. Okay, I just did those. I just knocked off questions 1 and 2. And guys, again, this is MAGA Bytes. This is my full-length podcast where I answer questions from members of Premium that send me questions literally, sometimes hourly. And I do this on a regular basis. And I want to say to everybody up front, this is my Christmas special. So a Merry Christmas to everybody. And I hope you are all going to have having a wonderful holiday season. We're heading towards 2020. We are going towards a victorious year. I know a lot of people don't feel like that because they go, well, Max, I don't really know if we're going to be able to, because, I'm a little, getting a little down, and it's that time of year. No, things looking really positive. Things are looking really positive. Let me tell you. Number 3, can you explain the appeals court ruling that recently came down on the Trump gag order?
Hello.
Are you there? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are, man. How you doing?
Word of advice: never do an update on your computer before you go live on a podcast.
That's okay. Me and the people were just having fun here, without you. So, anyways,
sure you were. I'm sure you were having a blast.
We were having a blast. I was just like, anyways, welcome, Roxy. Everybody knows Roxy. If you don't know Roxy, make sure you're following her at Roxy_Balboa. Make sure you're following her. You can email her, RoxyBalboa, 1 at gmail.com. You can always email her questions, comments for me, what have you.
Hi, everyone. I apologize for the delay.
Well, apology accepted, Roxy.
Thank you.
It's accepted. You're welcome. Welcome aboard. I'm glad to have you here. Yeah, I really didn't know. I was just like I was totally confused. Like, okay, you just bailed, so I was like, I just saw you a few minutes ago, and you're like, yeah, I'm logging in right now. And I'm like, I'm gonna log in, and like as soon as I get back to my computer, I'm like, okay, and she's not here. Okay, so what
I
happened?
decided to go watch some TV.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I was thinking you went to the gym, to do a work again.
That
So
possibly. I mean, I have done 2-a-days, so it's not rare for me.
and I know that. Don't I know that? I know that. So, anyways, I'm up to question 3 here. I'm going through the list that Julie sent me, and thank you, Julie, for she's so great. Aren't the angels great, guys? Send some love to the angels, will you? They're really great, my assistants, because they
We have an
collect all
awesome
the
team.
questions. They're a
Yeah.
great team. They collect all of the questions, and then they send them to me, and so I don't have to go kind of like sifting through and digging through the entire. I forget it. If I was there, I tried that the first week or so, I think, of Premium last year, because we're going on the second year of Maximus Premium. I remember that first week I spent like at 2 hours a day just trying to find all the questions in the room, because everybody's always dropping stuff and then they're commenting and talking, and I can't, like, where's the question for me? I don't know where it is. So thank God the girls go in there and do that work for me, because otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't be able to answer people like I do and constantly go back, and it's really hard when you're doing it.
And I just want to chime in and say, not only do you answer every single question that's dropped in there, but you answer it in like full length movie detail.
Yeah. It's true. That's true. Thank you. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, you don't just give them like a yes or no answer. I mean, you go into history, you dissect the whole entire question, and you give them a very, very thorough answer.
Thank you. Yeah, I do. I really do. Well, I like to, when someone, it's the teacher in me. So if you ask me a question, get ready for a lecture, because that's the kind of response. I always say this to people at my seminars, it's like because it was like, who was inspiration? The reason I'm a conservative is 2 people, Rush Limbaugh and Newt Gingrich. Okay. And Newt Gingrich is also one of the reasons why I, went heavy into history. One of the reasons. And I remember, I think it was like in the 2000s when someone who knew him personally was being interviewed, and they said that he's the kind of guy that you can wake up at 2 or 4 in the morning, throw something completely off the wall to him, like why is there dust on Mars, and he will go into an entire exposition on it for like 45 minutes, without just he'll roll over and just start telling you. He'll act like he's an expert on it and talk about it like he's thoroughly read on it, because he is. It's just that kind of a guy, And Rush, I feel like, was a lot like that. The guy was so widely read, and so that was one of the things that those are 2 of the individuals that inspired me. Because I was, way too young. I mean, I wasn't around when Reagan was around, but those were the guys that inspired me growing up, to be conservative and to get into history. So when I answer things for people, and having been a teacher and everything, and when I answer, I like to go in detail and give as much of the background as I can, so you're fully equipped. And then if you have a follow-up question, that's fine. And so just be prepared to take notes. So if you guys should join Premium, and if you join Premium, contact Roxy. She'll get you in. Ask for the 1 year. And if you're listening to this broadcast, ask for the 1 year discount and try it out, and you won't be disappointed. And you'll see what I mean, because we do that, and you sign up for my seminars. I have a seminar coming up. Is it next month? My next seminar, Rox?
Yeah,
I don't even
January.
I don't put the calendar.
January 19th.
When is it? Okay, so it's January 19th, guys. That's the 1 year anniversary. Oh, sorry, that's a 3 year anniversary. It's a 3 year anniversary. I've been doing seminars now for 3 years. How about that? So online seminars, 3 year anniversary. And it'll be one night only, I think, or one afternoon or something like that. It depends on where you're located. It'll be afternoon or evening. And we get into some deep Socratic discussions. So we have a group of people that'll be attending that, and we'll be talking about the court cases again. We'll be talking about, at that time we should have updates. So it'll be interesting to see where we're at by the end of the month of January. We'll be talking about civics. We'll be talking about the Republic. I'll be bringing in the Constitution, and it's sort of like just a big Socratic discussion on the events of the day, and it's an anniversary special. But we'll get to the rest of my schedule there later. I'm on question, and again, Rox, go ahead and chime in whenever you want to chime in. But question 3 is: can you explain the appeals court ruling that recently came down on the Trump gag order. All I can say to you, if I remember correctly, all I can say to you, and this is sort of like, again, this is a bit passe because we have so many other things that happened since this question was posted several days ago, but it was lifted, if I remember correctly, it was lifted, then it was restored in part. So the gag order is specific. I have to be honest with you guys. I don't get into the gag order controversy too much. I'm going to explain something to you. You may or may not agree with this or like it, whatever. But take Trump out of the picture. You're usually, when gag orders are put in place, it's to prevent intimidation of witnesses. So the problem that we have here, and this is where Democrats are being somewhat successful, is putting the merits of the ridiculous cases on the side. Even if Trump was guilty, which he's not of anything, if he was guilty, right, it's not uncommon for people to want to bully witnesses. If you're bullying witnesses, that's not cool, right? So he doesn't go out of his way to really bully anybody. It's politics. But there's this thing where he's a public figure and he's running for president, and so he has to be careful when he goes out and speaks, because he can't just say like, okay, here's a witness for the prosecution. Here's his name. Go give him a call, people, and tell him what you think of him. That would be illegal, and that would end with him getting probably arrested. Okay, well, at least if he wasn't the former president. So I understand the purpose of gag orders. Okay, they're really to protect the integrity of the court and the witnesses and whatnot from retaliation. Which, if any of us were in the same position, we would want the same protection. From the defendant. But the fact is, I think what the person's asking me here is what happened. Well, this has been this back and forth. First, there was a gag order, then it was lifted, then it was restored in part. And that's where it is right now, if I remember correctly. So it's sort of a moot point because we have so many other things that are going on right now. So it really doesn't matter anymore as much. But I just think this is my statement always to the Trump team. Just focus on the issues, just focus on the issues. Just talk about Biden, the economy, the border crisis, the problems, the way we have to overhaul immigration and restore sanity to our borders. We need to put 100,000 National Guards troops on the U.S. border. This economy is sinking. People have jobs that they can't even afford. The inflation is running rampant. A gallon of milk. I saw a gallon of milk for $9-10. I mean, that's
ridiculous.
It's I'm going to use the word again, guys. Obscene. Maybe I should call this, MAGA Bytes episode, whatever it is, 50 or whatever, obscenity, because it's really obscene America, because it's really sick what's happening. So these are the things. Let's talk about the military and being overextended. Let's talk about endless wars that we're getting into. We're at the verge of World War III. I don't pull that trigger very, very. I mean, a lot of people just say things for the sake of clicks and ad revenue. I don't do that. I mean, I've got my own gig. I do my own thing. I'm not in it for that. But the thing is that a lot of people just like throw things out there, but it really looks bad in Europe. Eastern Europe looks really bad right now. There's a major war raging in the Middle East that could get completely out of hand. Let's talk about these issues, and let's kind of like these fake cases, right, which are all going to be done away with. I tell you, he may get convicted on some count. I've never said he wouldn't, but he's going to win on appeal, and he's never going to a prison. Mark my words. If he's ever arrested, which, Hunter wasn't even arrested, right? Remember when everybody was saying, oh, Hunter's not going to be able to give testimony in D.C. because he was charged in L.A. in federal court? And I said that was nonsense. Obviously, nobody understands how the system works. He's going to be arraigned, and he's going to be out on bail within a few minutes. And then he's going to be able to fly back to D.C. and give testimony. And he ended up in D.C. in front of the Capitol, but he decided not to give the testimony, right? Which he should be held in contempt of Congress for, period. Okay, there, period, a sentence. But I said all that was going to happen, except the part where he didn't give testimony because he chose not to. Who was going to contempt. You get a subpoena, you've got to give testimony. You should respect that. I've been consistent with that. If you're subpoenaed, you got to give testimony. Show up in court, give your testimony. Doesn't mean you're going to go to jail. It doesn't mean you're going to lose the case or anything, or what have you. Well, anyway, getting back to it, go in there and claim the fifth if you need to. But back to Hunter, he was not. I mean, if he was arrested, we'll never know, right? I mean, if he was, like arrested for a minute and then he's out on bail. But Trump will never see the inside of a jail because the Secret Service can't protect them there, and they're bound and mandated. By the way, they're mandated by congressional law. The sitting president can't remove Secret Service protection from the former presidents. Period. That's a fallacy. Again, that's a fiction that people just don't understand the law. So now the former president can request that he or decline Secret Service protection, but that's a separate argument. And he will never do that. So, but they can't protect him. He has an entourage, like an army around him wherever he goes. What are they going to do? They're going to take a federal penitentiary and take over an entire floor and have all the doors open and have Secret Service there 24/7? Ridiculous. It's silly. It's stupid. It's like, it's never going to happen. Never. He'll get, I've said this in other podcasts, he'll get a slap on the wrist. And that would be, he's going to be confined to Mar-a-Lago while his appeal's going through the courts. That's if he's convicted on any of these charges, which I'm starting to really doubt he's going to get any conviction. He may get something maybe in Fulton County, maybe. That one's falling apart. Maybe it'll be the civil case where he'll, in New York, possibly. But other than that, I mean, no, it's just silly. You got anything on that, Rox? Want to make any comments or questions?
No, I mean, well, just to summarize that whole thing, I mean, the worst possible thing that could happen is basically he gets house arrest in Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah,
right?
That's about it.
I mean, because I think a lot of people are concerned about that. They think that maybe he could, go to jail, and then what's going to happen with his campaign, and then that's going to ruin his presidency. So thank you for putting that into layman terms for everyone.
Yeah, that's no problem. I'm relaxed over here, and I'm just going to just go over it the way
You're
I
always
see it.
Relaxed.
I am it's the truth.
What else is new?
I'm too relaxed, right? I mean, it's just crazy. I'm telling you.
Sometimes I purposely try to get you upset, and it just doesn't work.
Well, I mean, that's true. I mean, it's very hard to press, my buttons. It's the way I go through life. It's the way I see things, and I have a great faith in the Lord, and I don't really worry too much. So, about things. I just don't, guys. I mean, I've seen so many people worrying. It's one of the things I try to encourage people on all my channels, even my public ones, and I make comments. I have a lot of people out there, a lot of good people, a lot of great accounts out there. I know a lot of you guys follow a lot of them. I follow some of them. But, at the end of the day, I kind of just take a different outlook. I take a different perspective. I, have my own way of looking at it. I mean, think about all of the it's the end of the world kind of stuff we've read about for the last 3 years, or 4 years, if you want to go back to 2020 or 2019. It's whatever. We've survived. We're still here. We haven't been put in internment camps. That's
like, always a bright side.
That's always a bright side. At least you're not in an internment camp, right? I mean, come on, dude. So, it's like, wake up there, man. So I see Steven in the room there. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Steve.
Home team, bro. So anyways, and
you're like that in real life too. I just want everybody to know it's not a facade, and he just doesn't do it for Maximus Premium. I mean, he's legit like that in real life about every circumstance that comes up.
Ooh, you peaked. Yes, I am actually. No, she knows this. And so I am. I'm pretty consistent like that. And I try to be I've always been encouraging. I think a lot of my followers have seen that, and I just don't let things get to me. I just don't. Let's go to the next question here, though. Yep. We'll continue on.
Okay, yeah.
Do you want to read them? Yeah, go ahead.
Come on. I got to earn my keep on here. I got to do something.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, just don't update your computer again. Okay, so.
I won't. Okay. Please go into some detail of the NDAA and what the Senate vote the other night means.
Well, okay. So, the National Defense Authorization Act, or whatever it was called, Authorization Act, whatever. It's basically the military budget. They do this like every year, every 2 years, depending on the Congress. And they authorized that's a normal vote. Trump signed, I think, 2 or 3 into law. Yeah, he vetoed one of them. I think that was the last time he was in, like it was December of 2020. But they overrode his veto. At the end of the day, the thing everybody was upset about in there was an old, which has been around since just after 9/11, was an old federal law. I can't remember exactly what was it. Do you remember, Rox, what it was now? Because I feel like I'm drawing a blank here. What was it? If anybody in the garage knows what it was specifically in the NDAA that everybody was peeved about, you want to just drop it really quick. I love it in the garage. They'll just drop it. But anyway, the bottom line is whatever it was, and I'll say it as soon as I see the name or it comes to me. Whatever it was, it's only been reauthorized for 3 months, so it's going to have to be reauthorized. It'll expire again in March. So they'll have to have that argument over that. It has something to do with government surveillance. And they'll have that argument again, FBI, data mining, foreigners, who, not foreigners specifically, Americans, they have the power without a warrant to tap phone lines of Americans who are speaking to foreigners who are suspected of being terrorists. That's the substance of whatever provision it was that they've reauthorized. And it's only going to be for 90 days, and then they're going to reform it. And there's been a lot of calls by Rand Paul and a lot of other libertarian-minded conservatives to overhaul or rescind it and not reauthorize it. And I would have voted against it, frankly, of course. But the way they got a few Republicans to vote for it was by convincing them that it was only a 90-day extension, which it is. So they'll have the battle over that provision in the National Defense Authorization Act, and whatever the specific title is, the NDAA, at a later date. They have to reauthorize the military. They have to approve the military budget. They're going to have to approve a military budget because you have to pay our servicemen. So that's the thing, why they get a lot of Republicans that want to vote for it all the time. And in the past, Republicans were the ones that wanted the big military budgets anyway. So, but it's really the big argument on privacy rights had to do with that provision. And that was Section 702. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. That was at Section 702 is up for reauthorization in March around then. So we'll have an argument and a debate over that then in an election year, which I'm sure is going to be fun. And I would have again had the argument now, and I would have, hey, let's do it now and get it over with. But that's why Republicans capitulated on it. And if we, there was a lot of stuff that we would have supported, support. Of course, you support pay for the servicemen and women. Of course, you support, building new ships and new and ammunition and assembling ammunition, of course, and everything else that constitutes a military budget, of course, which is, hundreds of billions of dollars typically. But that's what it was really about. That's it. It just really, the argument was over Section 702. And there was, of course, woke elements like banning wokeness in the military. I always thought that you don't have the leverage in the House. You simply don't have if you have like a 3-seat majority, you don't have it. You don't have the Senate. You don't have the White House. Again, these are things we're going to have to relitigate after next year's election, so in 2025. Does that answer the question? I think that answers the question on that one.
I'd say so. And thanks, Steve. Is there an ongoing concerted effort to recall Katie Hobbs in process?
No, not that I'm aware of. There was about a year ago, oddly enough, as early as January, but no, there is no recall effort for Katie Hobbs. She's been managing to avoid doing anything that would have required a recall petition to be successful. So there is none. I think people are not, there's no push for it. Kerry has pivoted to the Senate elections and focusing on winning that, which she may very well do. And no, that's basically it. So I think that battle's over with. I think the focus is going to be on 2024 and flipping that Senate seat in Arizona. And picking up a House seat too, while we're at it. so picking up another House seat, which they may very well do. Abe Hamada is running. I think he's going after a weak Democrat. Well, one of the things that didn't get enough attention last year was the fact that Republicans picked up the majority delegation in Arizona. So it was really a split decision. The GOP control 5 out of 9 House seats in Arizona now. Okay, they lost both Senate seats, right? Okay, they lost the governor's mansion, quote unquote lost. They lost the attorney general's office and the secretary of state. So they lost all of that, but they picked up additional House seats, and they held the state legislature. It was really a split decision. Something like you see, it was better in Arizona than Nevada, but something like you saw in Nevada where the GOP flipped the governor's mansion there, but the Democrats held the state legislature and held the state delegations in the House, U.S. House. Next question.
All right. Will the impeachment inquiry have enough impact at this late hour on Biden's presidency?
It's not that late. I have said from the beginning he would be. I've said from before the beginning. Well, from the beginning of his presidency, I said in 2021 and in 2022 he'd be impeached, and he'd be impeached when he'd be impeached during the election year, and that's exactly how it's shaping up. He will, whether or not the GOP has the votes to impeach him, because we're actually now down since they kicked out Santos, and I think McCarthy's leaving, right? So we're down now. We're going to be down 2 House seats, okay? I don't know how fast they'll be filled. State laws in those states, New York and California, they're run by Democrats, so we don't know how that's going to turn out. But will the GOP have the votes to actually impeach him? It's a very slim majority. They can't lose really anybody. So it depends on what the articles are for impeachment. It depends on what evidence they bring forward. And we just don't have... I do believe he will be impeached, and I always believed it was going to happen, and that's the calendar. That's always been the GOP calendar. I don't know why. I've said this many times, and I don't think anyone really, there's been a strategy here to do it in an election year. It really does give a contrast because there'll be Trump in a courtroom here and there. Again, the way things are moving with the Supreme Court, we don't really know which trials Trump's going to show. Because, by the way, the March 4th or 5th, whatever it is, trial date for the D.C. court case with Trump, that's going to be gone. There's no way that's going to happen because the Fisher case is going to be taken at a steady pace. The Supreme Court may rule against Trump with immunity, and I think there's a good chance that they're just going to send it back to the lower court, or not even consider it, or just say no to it. However they decide to do it. Okay, they may rule for him too. I mean, there's a possibility there, but real thing is Fisher, like I said earlier at the beginning, and the Fisher case is going to go through the normal process through the court. They'll end up hearing it sometime, probably in the first quarter. That's between January and ending of March. Maybe it'll be early second quarter. Who knows? They won't decide it anytime before the end of June. You won't get a decision before. I mean, maybe they'll expedite it. I don't want to say just there's a 100% chance that they're not going to decide it before the end of June, but there's about a 96% chance that they won't. They're going to go through a normal process with it. They're going to hear, there's going to be a case. They're going to hear it in court and all that. Whatever the decision is, whenever it comes down, it's going to affect Trump and his case. And that's the most significant thing. And then if they rule as I say they're going to rule, they're going to overturn those convictions. I mean, if they don't, then this is a banana republic. Okay. I'll be the first to say it. Okay. But they're going to overturn those. That's going to have a terrific impact on Trump. It's just, what do you now have him on trial for? For what? What do you have him to making a speech? Words? No, I mean, come on. Then if they push on that point, he's going to end up back before the Supreme Court exercising his First Amendment rights to free speech. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, maybe the court wants to have those conversations and wants to take this all apart indirectly. I don't think so. I think they're going to, or directly, I mean, I think they go in the indirect route. This way they don't look partisan. They're going to rule in favor of the protesters. That's a good way for them to avoid looking hyper-partisan. and avoid getting directly involved with Donald Trump in his cases in an election year. But if they had to, they would. But regardless, I already said earlier, this has to do more with justice specifically for those three protesters who were convicted in a most outrageous kangaroo court system, as you see in D.C. Maybe the Supreme Court's going to really slap the crap out of the D.C. federal courts, and I hope they do. I really hope they censure those circuit and federal judges. I really hope they do, because it doesn't matter how conservative or moderate of a justice you are. It's disgusting the way that court's. Can you imagine if they put that kind of energy into going after people that deface monuments of Civil War heroes and American founding fathers, and how they, if they went after people? Hey, I think it should be a crime to assault, a federal crime to assault a police officer, personally. And I have no problem with arresting people that abuse, but that physically assault police officers. Of course, that's a crime. It's assault, and it's assault of a police officer. Can you imagine if the feds put their energy into going after those people and pursuing them? You would never have the riots we had in 2020. You'd never have that. It'd all be gone. You know, those people would disappear. First of all, they're paid actors, many of them. Secondly, they're cowards, because they cover their faces and they go out there and they commit acts of violence. You know, they burn down neighborhoods, they break down people's gates and go onto their front lawn, and then get upset when people go out there to protect their homes with weapons. You know, and it's ridiculous. But they would all disappear. They'd all be gone. Poof. If the feds backed up local law enforcement and did what they were supposed to do. I digress. Anyways, guys, you're welcome to be of course, you're welcome to be here. We are at MAGA Bytes. This is my full-length podcast that I do exclusively for members of Maximus Premium. And I'm in answering mode here. So this is like I'm the answer man today. I've been handed a litany of questions from members of Premium, and I'm just going through them one after another. And I am joined with my assistant, my personal assistant, Roxy Balboa. She's the archangel and the head of all of Max's Angels and Max's Warriors, which are my assistants that work behind the scenes largely. So anyways, Rox, you got another question for me?
I do. I have a few more questions for you. We're on a roll here. Okay. If you were advising Trump about who to pick for a VP, what would you say to him?
A year and a half ago, I would have said Ron DeSantis. Don't throw anything at me, guys. That was a year and a half ago.
Oh, boy.
Don't get angry. I know some of you that just ticked you off. I know that was a year and a half ago, guys. That was before he decided. We've come a long way. Yeah, we've come a long way. That was before he decided to destroy his career. And look, you know, I mean, I don't know. Was her name Kristi Noem? Right, the governor of, is it South Dakota or North Dakota? I think she's South Dakota. Yeah. So Kristi Noem, I like her. She's a real conservative. She's very pop. I think she just won re-election in her state with like 70% of the vote in 2022. Very conservative. I know there's some. I think it's going to be a defamation case. I think maybe there's some accusation going around of impropriety, but. I mean, heck, you know, absent that, and I don't know how legit that is, and I'm not going to even go any further than that because I don't like crap like that to you know, when people start throwing eggs at people. But, you know, look, I don't know. We have some good people. I know there's been a lot of people. I've asked this question. Everybody says their opinion. I don't frankly like any of them, the names that are being tossed around. I would prefer a successful governor from a state that we really we need to win. You know, if Youngkin, this is going to sound crazy again, people are not going to like this. If Youngkin had actually done what he said he was going to do, which I'm kind of surprised that he came very close, by the way. People don't know this, but he won 2 out of the 3 Senate seats that he needed to win in November. So we were 1 seat short of flipping the Virginia Senate. And then he didn't watch his flank, and he lost the House by like a seat or 2. So it was kind of surprising that it turned out to be this, like, it almost ended up being a wash, but it just ended up being a loss for him. So his machine isn't as strong as he thought it was. Had he flipped the Senate as he said he was going to do, I was thinking, well, he would be probably an interesting choice for VP because he would probably carry Virginia for us. In the old days, it's like Ronald Reagan picked George H.W. Bush because of his influence with the mainstream party and in Texas. He promised to bring Texas. Don't forget, Texas was very Democrat in 1980. So, we don't really think of that now. We think, well, Reagan could win anything. No, in 1980, Reagan wasn't inevitable. In 1980, in a lot of polls in 79 and 80, Reagan was running in the 30s. And sometimes he was in the low 40s. And people think, well, Reagan won with this big landslide in 1980. Yeah, he did, but it was a three-way race. Does anybody remember that? There was Reagan, there was Jimmy Carter, and there was a man called Senator Anderson. I forgot his first name now. And he was running as an independent, and he was a former Democrat, a liberal Democrat. And so Reagan won in a three-way race. Reagan won with 51% of the vote. Jimmy Carter came in with 43% approximately of the vote. Think about that. 43% of the country voted for Jimmy Carter after all of that high inflation, high interest rates, the fiasco with the Khomeini uprising, the Iranian Revolution, the fiasco with the hostage situation, okay, that resulted in the deaths of numerous U.S. Servicemen. Specifically, Delta Force was first used on a high-profile mission at that point. High energy costs. Everything was bad. The economy was terrible. We had high unemployment. And yet 43% of the country voted for Jimmy Carter for re-election. And then, of course, there was Anderson. Anderson took about 7% of the popular vote. So it was a landslide electorally and in the popular vote. But Reagan only got 51% of the vote in that one. It would have been closer had Anderson not run in his first election. 1984 was a complete wipeout. Reagan won 49 out of 50 states. That was a genuine one-on-one landslide. I think he got like 57% of the popular vote, 58, 9, something like that. The only person higher than that in the last 50 something years was Nixon. I think Nixon, or maybe it was Eisenhower. I think Nixon got close to 60, I think, and then in 72, and then I know Eisenhower passed 60% of the popular vote. I think it was in 56 in his reelection. I'm really starting to push it there. That was the first time I voted for Republican, was in 1956 for Eisenhower.
Weren't you like 80 years old?
Yeah, at the time it was hard. I had to actually, I needed to be taken to the polling place. They didn't have mail-in voting back then, mail-in ballots. So I actually had to be picked up and driven over there to vote for him. So, that's when I decided to be a Republican. Yeah, it's in my biography. So.
All right. Oh, yeah. If elected, do you think Trump will go scorch earth or try to appease the establishment?
Oh, I know. This is for you, T. I know who this is. And thank you for everything. I appreciate you, hon. I know you've been waiting patiently for me to answer this one. In some areas, he will. I think he's going to go scorched earth when it comes to the Justice Department, the FBI, cleaning those out. He has to. I think he may go a little scorched earth when it comes to the Pentagon and replacing and requesting resignations from certain officials. I don't think he's going to go like. I think there's your answer to your question. I think that's it. Those are the people that have been haranguing him, right? Specifically the Justice Department, the FBI, and all of that. You clean out that, like, for instance, that Jack Smith's, he's no longer going to be employed or ever, he's gone, he's going to be fired. Well, his council will be disbanded by then, but he has to get rid of every Obama plant and every Biden operative throughout the Department of Justice and the FBI, and bring up all new people from the bottom up. It's sort of like the movie Untouchables. Remember The Untouchables with Sean Connery and Kevin Costner? I remember that line in it. It's a great movie, by the way. Excellent movie. It's a wonderful movie. I remember that line in it where Sean Connery, Kevin Costner says, well, who can we trust? Elliot Ness is saying, who can we trust? And he goes, well, if you're afraid of, Sean Connery's retort was, if you're afraid of getting a rotten apple, don't go to the grocer, get it off the tree instead. And so they went down to the police academy in Chicago and literally picked out, police recruits that were just hired, fresh recruits, to be members of their group. And that is the ideal way. So you have to go down to the bottom and just pick these people out. They haven't been corrupted yet. They're young. They haven't been influenced. They're not on the take. That's where you go. You forget about these people that have been there for 10, 15, 20 years. Just got to completely mass resignation. And I think when we say the deep state, a lot of that is being underscored by this large bureaucracy of unelected officials and agencies, which Trump figured out the last year of his the last few months of his presidency. Oh, you know what? I can just furlough all these people and fire them under a certain federal statute. And yeah, that's true. You could. You should have done that from the beginning. See, he had the wrong people. He had the wrong people around him advising him, right from the beginning. And we all know this. If we're all being honest, we all know this. We all have who is your least favorite? This is a good question. Who is your least favorite Trump official, person you didn't like that he had in his administration or his agencies? I know a lot of people are going to probably put down, Mike Pence, of course, and stuff like that. But, absent that, the vice president and all that, go down the list and think about people he had advising him and people that were supporting him. And, you'll probably find there's more than one. And he's had a lot of traitors, and that's because he had some really bad people as his chief of staff, as his attorney generals. He's had two terrible attorney generals. They weren't like the first one. What was his name again? He was a former senator from Alabama. I forgot his name now, but he wasn't like a horrible senator. He was a good senator, but it's just like they didn't do what they were supposed to. They weren't aggressive enough. We need a Republican version of Eric Holder. A conservative version of Eric Holder. How's that sound? I mean, a MAGA version of Eric Holder, someone who's vicious and goes in and completely restructures the organization and basically brings it back in line with its original mission, which is to provide justice and defend and protect the rights of citizens and put down crime and prosecute criminal behavior, not look for crimes in people's, in people because you don't like their political persuasion. I'm going to look for a crime. That's what you're basically doing. Let's try and find something to pin on you instead of actually, investigating crimes and then enforcing the law with extreme prejudice, regardless of your political persuasion. I don't care who you voted for. If you committed a crime, you should be punished for it. But what they're doing now is again, the keyword this time, this hour, or hour and a half, whatever it's turning out to be. The key word here is obscene. It's obscene. And it's evil. What's going on? So, I got another. Matt Whitaker. Someone's saying in there. Matt Whitaker. Is it? Somebody's saying also in the room there. McCarthy left on Thursday. Oh, McCarthy's gone already? I didn't even know he was gone. Anyway, I didn't know he was gone. I honestly, I don't. If I wasn't for you guys. I would not even some of these names. Some of the times I don't even follow all the details like the member. This is what's really great about Premium too, is we have members who bring up little details and kind of like they bring in all of these different points of view into the conversation. It's not just me sitting there, lecturing or anything like that, or just answering questions or engaging. It's also all these other news hawks and people. Some of them are obviously deeply embedded. I know because I converse with them regularly in different groups and in different organizations, and they just know what's going on. And it's kind of fun actually have access to all that.
It is.
I agree. Ken Paxton would be a great attorney general. I actually do. I like Ken Paxton. He's a great guy in Texas. Got another one for me, Rox? Or do you have any comments or observations on your own there or anything?
Yeah, no. Let's keep going on. Yeah, well, because the next question actually kind of picks up for what you were just saying. So, is there any real effort to remove Christopher Wray, or is there not a majority to make that happen?
Let's. I don't see that one on my list here. She must have added that one. So, is there any real effort to remove Christopher Wray? Well, not now. I mean, when Trump comes in, I think he'll fire him, and that's. Like you said, it kind of falls into what I was saying earlier. I think he fires them. And that's just my view. I mean, he's got to go. right? And that's my point. You have to. It's not enough just to fire the top people, guys. You have to go down through the bureaucracy. You have to eliminate those offices or eliminate those positions. Really, he needs to request, and this is not uncommon. Do you know incoming administrations have furloughed or fired or requested the resignations of thousands of people within agencies? What Trump didn't do that. And that's why he was struggling throughout his first term. He's learned. I know he's learned because of the way he's talking. I don't know if, and we've talked a lot about this on Premium and stuff, so I'll just share it here with everyone. It is so obvious now with something I've been saying over and over and over and over again in the garage and on the Fortress and on my newsletter and all that. If you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, make sure you subscribe to it. Another issue is coming out soon. And what it is that the Trump team is in such an intellectual state. They have a brain trust, I'll use my expression, that they've assembled earlier this year, which is being tested out in various states. They've learned how to govern. They're practicing it in their campaign. What's happening, what you see going on in places like New Hampshire, places like Iowa, it's like they're ignoring the noise and they're focusing on the substance, like Dad always says. Okay, like the great Steve Bannon says. I call him Dad sometimes out of affectionate because he reminds me of my dad. Okay, you guys know that. If you've been following me for 4 years, you know that. And he's one of the few podcasters I have the utmost respect for, and I listen to. And so, you've got a team now in place. It's similar to the 2016 team, but they were kind of like putting it together as they went. They've actually got it constructed. And they're very, very low profile. They're on the ground in all these states. They're working with the local GOPs, okay, state GOP parties, and they're putting together a massive get out the vote campaign. Of course, GOTV. They're working to put together an administrative. I don't want to say state because that sounds that has a pejorative that's meaning to it, but a campaign structure that will motivate, identify people, low propensity voters, get them to the polls, build energy, make use of local Republican apparatus, usually Republican get out the vote means, mesh themselves in that substructure that's at the state level. And while they're doing all of this, they're making friends and influencing enemies. Okay? Does that make sense? And that's why you may hear things like Governor Kemp say, yeah, I'm going to endorse Trump and help him, when the time comes. I'm like taking a double take, like, what? Weren't you two guys just hate each other? I mean, superficially, I guess Trump still doesn't like him, quote unquote, but that's funny. And in Iowa, like, oh, Trump's afraid of DeSantis. That's why he's suddenly making a push. No, he's not afraid of DeSantis. He never really has been. I mean, it's a justifiable at the beginning. It was like, we want to make sure that he has no competition. You got to crush the competition. And that's what both campaigns are doing to their opponents. Campaigns do that. Doesn't just win. He's afraid of losing Iowa. No, he wants to make sure he doesn't just win. He doesn't want to just win by a landslide. He wants to completely crush it in Iowa. Why? Well, there's a legitimate reason, because Iowa is one of the few states that, because they're a caucus too, they allocate their delegates for the nomination based on the percentage that you get. So you may win the state, but your opponents still get a cut of the delegates. So the larger your share of the victory, the more delegates you win. And it's a statement too. And you see the reflection in the polls, though, as a result of it. You see it in all the polls, all the polling data, even their internal polls. You notice that DeSantis doesn't really, or Haley and all, they have internal polls that they've commissioned. Notice they never release their internal polls. Their internal polls are worse than the public polls. Typically, campaigns release internal polls when public polling isn't showing that good of a number, when they have numbers that contradict it, just try to change the narrative. They can't release their internal polls. Their internal polls are horrific. If they release their internal polls, whatever few people that are supporting them is going to run for the hills. They're gone, right? This is just me. I know this stuff, guys. I know this stuff, okay? And so I've never been concerned. I mean, I knew back in January this wasn't a primary. I said that, I've been saying it all year. Come on. But now it's like, man, I didn't know it was going to be this big of a victory. But having spoken to a lot of people, having done the research, what's going on is they're putting together, and the people that he has brought on, this is not 2016, guys, and this certainly isn't 2020. This is a very different, it's like I said to someone in the garage today, Max's garage. I said, it's uncharted territory. It's really uncharted territory because we've never seen Trump's team so good. And what I'm talking about here is the team on the ground in the states that are going to win these primary states. He'll do a sweep. I said this already in post. It's nothing really, it's not a big secret, right? That's what I think he's going to win. He's going to sweep. But having said that, and that team is going to translate to the administrative team and the transition team. They're going to become the transition team when he wins next November. And they're going to become the White House team. And a lot of them are nameless individuals. Some of them and some of them are the people that are working with them that you don't know. And they're experts. And they know what they're doing. And the results are going to be the victories we're going to see starting, I think, January 15th, 16th, whenever the Iowa is, it's January 15th. So that is it. Now, I mean, do we know definitively that, Donald Trump's definitely going to win Iowa? Well, no, I mean, heck, I don't have a crystal ball. Nobody can say they honestly know definitively, but every indication is that's what's going to happen. The question is, how big is the victory going to be? And we'll have to wait and see. Now, if they do win as big as I think they're going to win these early states, and again, I mean, big is like, 15, 20, 30 point victories, somewhere in that range. I think with that, you then have to start thinking to yourself, okay, then these guys are onto something. These guys and gals are onto something. This team he's put together is onto something. And that is going to be the people that are going to be the transition team. And that transition team is going to become the administration, the new administration. That's what I'm talking about. And you wonder, well, how do you draw that conclusion, Max? Well, look back on past administrations. Okay. Look back on past administrations. The people that ran, first of all, I've never seen such a well-organized, you notice how many people have not quit Trump's? We don't even hear the names half the time. They're low profile. They're low key. The Trump campaign isn't losing anybody. Remember in 2016, they kept firing people and hiring new people. He kept doing that because he had to kind of find his way, right? 2020 was a little more stable, but he was busy being president at the same time, so, and there was COVID and it was a big mess, really. 2024 is different. There's like nothing, with DeSantis, losing teams a lot of times, so they fire people, and you see that all the time with losing teams. Remember Rick Perry in 2012, Rick Santorum, I think that was 2012 again, Rudy Giuliani, 2008. But you look at the Trump team this time, they're stable. DeSantis keeps changing. Everybody keeps leaving, and PACs there's a big, because he's losing. That's why. And he has the wrong people, and look, his announcement should have never been on Twitter to begin with. It is silly. But the fact is that you've got a real smooth team here. They go back into 2000, right? Karl Rove, the Bush team, they were running the campaign. That was the campaign. The campaign became the transition team. The transition team became the administration. Karl Rove became, I think he was White House chief of staff at one point, right? If I remember correctly. And so, they carry over and they help the person govern. Okay. He's got the right people with him this time. Now, of course, the proof is in the pudding. Will he win? And I'm not making that projection now. I mean, personally, I'm like, I always, me, I'm Mr. Positive, right? I don't get down about anything, but I always look for the silver lining, even when there's a dark cloud. But, and there usually is one, You just have to know where to look. Sometimes it's hidden. But we'll see now. We'll see Iowa. That'll tell us something. New Hampshire, tell us something. South Carolina, tell us something. Nevada. It'll just go right down to Super Tuesday. By the time we get to March, though, I'm telling you, we're all going to be sitting around. This thing's well over. And then we'll be looking for the general and everything. But I just wanted to bring that out. So when you say scorched earth, we're way back to the early question. Yeah, I think the scorched earth will be probably the Justice Department and all of that. He's probably got people on his mind already for Attorney General. Hopefully, like someone in the garage just said a few minutes ago, hopefully it's Ken Paxton. So I mean, somebody like that. I would go with Ted Cruz. I know a lot of you probably don't like Ted Cruz, especially in Texas. Some of you don't like him down there, and I understand that. But there's some but I mean, Ted Cruz is another one I would consider for that. There's a few people I would consider for Attorney General that I trust because of their conservative bona fides. So. Are you still there, Roxy?
There you go. I am here. That is why you need to be a member of Premium. I mean, do you understand the level of detail and education that he goes into? This is what you're going to just be so educated for 2024. It's ridiculous.
It's obscene. It is. It's obscene. It's obscene. I do this all the time. We have these conversations with, and it's fun because we sit around there and we chat. Sometimes we chat the night away, and sometimes we have debates and arguments. We have a lot of colorful people in there. I'm telling you. So it's a great crowd. And I know they all reach out to each other and they support each other too. And we have, and we do a lot of, I sometimes feel like we're part counselor too. So, because sometimes people are a little upset, a little moody, a little green, and they're upset and, and they come out and we have to kind of like comfort them and what have you. But it's part of what we do. It's a different, and I don't consider myself a podcaster, because I don't do podcasts. They're like just random. They'll drop. Sometimes you'll get more. Sometimes you'll get, one every week or one every 2 weeks. And then sometimes you'll get more than one in 1 week. It depends on what's going on too. But one of the things when I do them is I like to answer questions. So it's not like Max Bytes where it's 10, 15, 20 minutes and I may answer a question, but a lot of times it's just to give a positive reinforcement. It's just to encourage all my followers, but when I do MAGA Bytes, it's like, we want to make sure answering if I haven't already in a messaging board or in a post or whatever, because everything I do is blogging, microblogging, what have you. When the website goes live, it's going to be a combination of news, analysis, fact checking even, and so there's all this other stuff. But then it's like if for premium members, I want to make sure that because I get hundreds and hundreds of questions every week. And I'm just there kind of like, okay, I have to, they want to know this, they have to know that. And of course the election season, it's just insane. It's like, boom. So if you want to join Premium, email Roxy at roxybalboa@gmail.com, or just message her on Twitter or Telegram. It's at Roxy_Balboa.
Yep.
And you can get her on Twitter. You can DM her directly. You can get her on Telegram, drop her an email, whatever. And just ask her for the 1 year anniversary discount. Tell her, hey, I want to try it out, and you're welcome and enjoy it. I think we would love to have you.
Yeah, and you get instant access right away to all of Max's podcasts, going back basically to the beginning of Premium, and all of his posts. So it's not like you just join today and you only get to see what he's posting today. You get the full deal, and you also get cool discounts on his seminars and his merch, which is only going to be growing over the next year or so. So a lot of exciting things are happening.
Uh-huh.
Now is the time to join, because not only that, but if you do take advantage, we're also having a special on the annual gold. And if you do take advantage of that, it'll get you through election season at a huge discount. So for those of you that love discounts, it's the way to go.
Yeah, a lot of people upgraded. A lot of them have upgraded to annual. So if you want to come on as an annual member, we've had a few do that. By all means, join as a platinum member or join as a gold member, and just send an email to Rox and ask her about it. She'll work you through all the details. So anyways, do we have another question?
We have a couple more questions. They're mostly related to the Supreme Court. You probably went over it before I came back online, so I'm just going to ask them again, though, just in case. So with the Colorado Supreme Court removing Trump from the ballot and the Colorado GOP moving to a caucus, how does this work? Please explain.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, I got it. No, I get it. I get it. Okay. So, no, I got this one. Caucus. Okay. Real simply put, everything used to be more caucus style back in the day. Okay. We're talking generations ago now, decades ago. Okay. Almost all states are primaries. Now, primaries function just like an election, like a regular secret ballot election. They may be an open primary where people can vote across party lines. So, for instance, some states allow, if you're a registered Republican, you can vote in the Democratic primary or vice versa. Okay. And then there is closed primaries, which means that if you're a registered Republican, you can only vote in the Republican primary. If you're a registered Democrat, you can only vote in the Democratic primary. And then some states have weird kind of like laws where the independents can't vote and they have to re-register Republican or Democrat to vote, or they can vote in either. So it's up to the states. That it varies from state to state. That's primaries. They function, though, a lot more like the general election. Caucuses, the old-fashioned way of doing it. It's basically like a big fair. That's how I like to put it. It's like you get everyone shows up in to different designated areas. They show their support for whoever they're going to vote for. They usually are grouped together, and then they vote openly by a show of hands usually, and there's a head count. And it's so everybody sees who's everybody else is voting for, and there's no real way to hide it, and there's no real way to rig it. It's a little more democratic that way, or at least open. I should say it's a little more transparent that way. So like if you're standing there and say everybody raises their hand for Trump, you can't not count them, right? So the Colorado case specifically says that you can't write his name in on the ballot, but they don't use ballots in a caucus. People vote by a show of hands, and then they just tally it, right? It's almost like being in the House of Representatives. There's a show of hands and the ayes, or in case that there's usually just ayes, and then sometimes there is a motion to do a ballot or to do a vote, and that's again open, it's transparent. And there's that element to it, and it's a little bit like that system there that you see in the House, whereas nobody has a secret ballot in the House. Everybody knows how everybody else is voting. Same thing in the Senate. In a caucus, it's the same thing. And so by converting Colorado, the GOP, which is their right to do it, the party can do whatever it wants. They just have to get permission from the RNC itself. By converting it to a caucus, it does an end run around the actual decision from the Colorado Supreme Court, which has already stayed, by the way, guys. It's Trump's name's still going to be on the ballot because the Supreme Court of Colorado stayed the decision. They made it, and then they stayed it in their decision. So stay meaning that they've paused it. So they can't remove Trump's name from the ballots currently. I think the Colorado primaries in March. So they're going to revisit. They did that specifically because they know an appeal is going to the U.S. Supreme Court. How fast it gets there, I had a question earlier. How fast is that appeal going to go through? I don't know. I don't know how fast. It depends on it's the holiday season right now. So I don't know. It depends on when the Trump team actually files it. They probably already did or will soon. But the decision currently is stayed, so it's not enforceable. So they'll revisit that next month, the Colorado Supreme Court. But if the Supreme Court of the United States agrees to hear the case, they'll probably keep the stay in place, in which case all of this is sort of like a moot point. I don't know if the GOP will actually convert it to a caucus, because of all intents and purposes, the Supreme Court may say, yeah, we're going to hear the case on March 10th, March 15th, we'll hear it, which means that, and they may put an injunction against the decision in the interim, which makes it a moot point for this election, for the primary, because by then they'll already have had their primary. So it all depends on how the court cases go on there, as far as the timeline goes, the calendar goes. And I'm just speculating. We don't know. It's too early, so we don't know. When who is going to hear what. We don't even know if the Trump team filed directly with the Supreme Court. They might file in federal court first, so it all depends. But there's a lot of different ways that can go. But the fact of the matter is, the big difference between the caucus and the primary is just how you go about tabulating and how you go about voting and how you go about tabulating. It's basically it. It's just it's a different system, and it's an older system. And if they decide to go with a caucus, it sort of again renders all of this a moot point. But the question will still be whether Trump will appear on the ballot in November for the general. So that still has to be decided, because if the feds are going to have to step in before that. That's the important election for Colorado. Because who knows, Colorado may become a battleground. And if by the way, if come October we're sitting around discussing how Colorado is one of those important states that Trump may win, then this is going to be a blowout. I can just tell you that right now, because it's like all intents and purposes, this is not a state that he's going to win. This is a state he lost twice. This is a state that Romney lost, that McCain lost. Last time I voted Republican was in 2004. It has trended, unfortunately, to the left. It's terrible because it's a beautiful state. And I love the history of Colorado. Absolutely love it there. But it's unfortunately Aspen. It's like it's Aspen. Well, it's not just Aspen, but it's trended to the left in recent decades. So we'll see what happens. It's still there's a lot of moving parts. Now, is there a question about Colorado court case, Rox? Do we have one about that?
We had one I just asked, and then the last one too. But it's more in regards to the appeal.
Okay, that's fine. What's the last question?
Yeah, so given the Supreme Court can deny any case, what's the chance of them denying the appeal regarding Trump not being on the ballot in Colorado?
That's an odd. It's you're asking me the odds. I'd say there's a 1% chance they don't hear the case. They deny. They don't accept the case. There's only like less than a percent chance. There's a 99% chance. Yeah, they're gonna hear that case. Yeah, it's that important. Sure. It's that important. It's a slam dunk too for a decision. That there's no way. I've said this over and over and over and over again. I mean, that's the post I keep putting out there that got 500,000 reads, I think, or something like that the other night. He hasn't been convicted. I don't think people are so on the left. They're deranged. I mean, they really are. I try to be objective at times. I have Democrat friends. You can't be an archaeologist and not have liberal Democrat friends or colleagues. You can't be a teacher and not have liberal colleagues and acquaintances. I wouldn't necessarily say they're friends, but when you sit there and you look at it, sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm like, where are you coming from, dude? I mean, it's like you just come out and you make a statement. Oh, he's guilty. Are you guilty? Where was he ever charged with rebellion or insurrection or found guilty for rebellion or insurrection in a federal or state court? When did that ever happen? It never happened. Well, they declared him. You made a declaratory judgment. You just said, without him even, he is guilty of insurrection. They didn't even say he was guilty. He committed insurrection and rebellion, and it's self-executing. You hear that regurgitated nonsense. I hate it when people regurgitate things, but they do this all the time because they can't think for themselves because they're zombies. Unfortunately, because of social media, people's brains are plugged in and they don't think for themselves and they just regurgitate things. It's self-executing. He's committed an insurrection. What happened to due process? Whoa, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. What is that? What does a process do? No, due process. Where does it? And you deal with this. And then you wonder why I lock my replies sometimes. It isn't because I don't want conservatives making comments. I see these people go on my timeline. Oh, guys, you can see that one guy a day ago or so, whatever it was, a few days ago, he was on there going, he's quoting the Colorado decision. And my point was, he hasn't been charged with, tried, or convicted of this. And so you're innocent until proven guilty. So it's like you're punishing a person for something that they've never even been formally, not accused only, but formally indicted for. It's ridiculous. It's not justice. It's not. This is a violation of his civil rights. So that's to begin the conversation. The fact is to the merits of it, Section 3 is non-applicable. It's non-applicable in the 14th Amendment. For the context, if you're being an original, they're trying to say it's originalism, guys. Here's I'm going to tell you exactly how to argue that point at the Christmas dinner table / the New Year's party that you're at, whatever, with your liberal friends, if you have any. It's not originalism. Originalism dictates that you have to look at the context in which something was originally written. Okay, in this case, the 14th Amendment was adopted when? It was adopted immediately after the Civil War. In response to what? Republicans wrote it in response to what the Confederacy did. So the context is the American Civil War. Section 3 specifically, clearly is talking about rebellion and insurrection. What were they talking about? Were they talking about Donald Trump tweeting something? No, they were talking about the Confederates taking up arms against the United States in a 4-year struggle that resulted in the deaths of 500,000 Americans. And both sides were Americans. Both sides were Americans. It's another thing I used to tell students all the time. I still do, by the way, like past tense. But I remember my first year's teaching having some really heated debates with students who were just brainwashed into this idea that, well, the people from the South, they weren't really American. And I'm from New York. Everybody knows that. And I'm as Yankee as they come. And it's like, no, they were very American. They are Americans too, you know. You're not just an American, okay? They're Americans too. And 500,000 Americans died during the Civil War, in part to give freedom to African Americans. The blood that was shed. And it was a terrible period. And it took a lot for this country to get through it. And in the aftermath, Reconstruction made things worse for people across and all political spectrums. It was a terrible idea. I mean, the Reconstruction was a failure in the South, and it sustained long-term poverties for African Americans and whites in the Deep South. And then you go on further into the 20th century historically, and it took a long time for this country to heal. And the monuments that are up there are so we don't forget the sacrifices that went on. We should never get to a point in this country where brother is fighting against brother, because our enemies are always out there, and they love that, right? They love that. And so, it's like I saw in a movie once about Oliver Cromwell. It was one of my favorite, and I know I have a lot of Irish followers, so forgive me. Oliver Cromwell is one of my favorite characters in English history, along with I love post-Tudor. I love Tudor England, post-Tudor England, and the whole period of the English Civil War. But I remember in the movie with Richard Harris, him saying something like, when people stop talking, when men stop talking, is what he actually said. They go for their swords. And he goes, our job is to keep them talking, right? This was before the Civil War in England. And it's true, you have to keep the dialogue open. You have to keep talking. That's why I always like to encourage people, hey, reach out and try to have that conversation with somebody on the other side of the spectrum. You'll find people that want to be rational. They may not be informed. Usually they're not, by the way, if they're on the left spectrum. And sit down, because there are irrational people on both sides, of course. But on the left, there are irrationals. But then you could find a few people. I've had long debates with them, and they're like, oh, well, students, I never looked at it like that, and I didn't know that. Wow, Max, you just told me something I wasn't aware of. You go back and research it, and I'll look if you have some question, send it to me and I'll give it to me and I'll look it up and that's the way I usually am in class. But and I'll give you an objective as much as I can. I'll give you an objective view. But man, I'll tell you something. When you look at the section 14, just get back to it because I digress a bit. Get back to section 14 of the 14th Amendment, section 3, specifically contextually originalism. It has to do with the Civil War. It has nothing to do at all with anything outside of that context. And if you want to be a literalist, interpretist about it, okay, so you have to then sit there and you go to yourself, all right, it says rebellion or insurrection. Where's the charges for rebellion or insurrection? Where was Congress's resolution declaring the January 6th riots an insurrection? The Democrats never made one. The president at the time, President Trump, followed by Biden. I refuse to call him President Biden, but he is the sitting president, unfortunately. Regarding Joe Biden, neither of them invoked the Insurrection Act or declared through proclamation the events of January 6th an insurrection. Where has there been anybody charged with insurrection or rebellion? Nobody has been. There is no insurrection. It was not an insurrection and it was not a rebellion. At most, it was a riot. At least it was a bunch of people that and in some cases, they shouldn't have been where they were, and they were taking selfies. Oh, for Pete's sake. Oh, for Pete's sake. This is absurd. It's stupid. It was dumb. The whole thing is dumb. And let me tell you, for my money, it was also had something to do with the feds being involved in it, I think, at some level. And I know a lot of my followers out there look at it like that. So anyways, did I answer your question?
You answered all of the questions and then some.
And then some. Well, listen, and everybody, my next seminar is, again, you said was January 19th. It'll be a 3-year anniversary special. So it's going to be usually they run each night runs anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, 2 to 5 hours. So if you want to join us on January 19th, send an email into Roxy or contact any of the angels and tell them you'd be interested in more details on that. It's going to be fun. I know a bunch of the people that are going to be attending already. We'll be talking about the court cases in more detail. We'll have a lot new data coming up by then. We'll also be talking about how this is going to reflect on election 2024, because again, that's a month from now. So we should have more insight into where this is all going with these cases. The other, I know my big seminar, which everybody is signing up for, this is already turning out to be, this is looking like it's going to be it's amazing because I haven't done this in 2 years. But it's February 22nd to the 24th, right, Roxy?
Yep.
Okay, Pirates, Buccaneers, Privateers, and the Search for Buried Treasure. It's the special edition of Pirates. I've done this seminar twice, or I should say once, and I did an encore immediately after, and that was 2 years ago. I haven't done it since then, but it's already, it was the biggest seminar at the time I did it, was the biggest seminar. It's going to turn out to probably be, if not the biggest, one of the biggest seminars. I'm really surprised that, I hardly even promoted it yet, and it's already, a lot of people they've been asking me to do this for a year and a half. I've been getting requests.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do it again, they missed it. A lot of people couldn't attend it. And so if you love history, if you like anything to do with piratical history, if you like anything to do with buried treasure, this is going to be a very serious, heavy, and somewhat violent history seminar. So it's for families. It's not violent in a graphic way. It's just, we're going to really go through about a 200-year period. We'll be covering about 180 years of Caribbean history. So, join me for that. Contact, Roxy if you want to reserve a seat for that. And then, late March, we haven't gotten the dates yet. Vote Like a Democrat. That's a big seminar. Vote Like a Democrat literally means what it says. I'm going to be talking about Democrat voting techniques for 2 days. So if you are interested in that, you want to reserve a seat for that, contact Roxy, send her an email, roxybalboa1@gmail.com, or DM her. And then, of course, in May will be my projections on the 2024 elections. And I know everybody's going to be there for that. So if you want to reserve seats for any of these, you want to get tickets for them, reach out to Roxy. This will be three. We're going now into 4 years here soon. It'll be 3 years in January, and then we're going to start going into the 4th year of me doing seminars. And I've had thousands of people attend my seminars now. It's a very great feedback on them. So I'm still doing them. So anyways, I hope you guys can join us for that. And of course, contact Roxy if you want more podcasts. You want to try premium, give it a shot. Try it out for a month. Email Roxy. Tell her, hey, sign me up for premium. How do I go about it? When my website is finished and goes up live next year, you'll have access. You do now. You have access to a bunch of my premium articles, but there's going to be whole sections on there for that are just news and all that stuff. And then of course there's also the premium stuff that'll be on there, and we have other benefits that will be rolling out for members of premium. So
2024 is going to be jam-packed with seminars and exciting things going on. So, I mean, if there's any time to join premium, it's right now.
Absolutely. I highly recommend it. And I have, like I said, we have such a group of people there.
So great.
Just hundreds of patriots. Oh yeah. And then of course you get for free, you get Max Tracks, my newsletter, and we have hundreds of people that are subscribed to that. I think it's actually very high. I think it's higher than that, frankly.
More than that.
More than that. Okay. So we've got that, but you get that for free. As a member of premium, you get my newsletter for free. So another one's going to be going out. I hope to have it out here in the next 2 weeks. So, within the next 2 weeks. So if you're not receiving it, make sure you send an email to Roxy, let her know. But, if you're interested in just signing up for that, you can become a member. It's sort of like Maximus Premium Light. You become a member of the newsletter Max Tracks. But anyways, all right. So listen, from the bottom of my heart to all of you, I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope you are blessed and have a peaceful season, and confusion to the enemy. And I look forward to Amen, right? And I look forward to seeing all of yous and talking to yous again soon. And this is Max. I'm going to be signing off and relaxing with family and friends. So anyways, thank you, Rox, again for everything. It's been fun.
Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy New Year.
By the way, I forgot to say
Happy New Year to you. God bless you. Take care.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
So I only got Archers out because this is the new format. I only got Archers out, and I noticed it today when I logged into PayPal, and I went, uh-oh. So I